All right, so welcome everyone to Healthy Building with HempWood and LEED certification. The reality is if we want to achieve LEED standards, enterprise, or Green Star, other green building standards, one of the ways that often gets overlooked is the actual materials that are going into our homes and buildings. We focus a lot on energy efficiency, of course. We focus a lot on ventilation and air filtration. But what is the reason we even need that ventilation and air filtration in the first place, if not to remove all of the pollutants we put into the materials that go into building our homes and buildings and during renovations? And so the idea of what we would say, just like we discuss energy efficiency first, the idea we would want to discuss the materials themselves, not putting the pollution into homes and buildings in the first place. And so that is the precursor, the first thing you even want to do before you start considering ventilation and air filtration. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that and other benefits as well. Before we do that, I wanted to let you all know as we always do, our GHI membership spotlight. Michigan Net Zero Homes LLC is building a passive house source zero LEED Green Star Platinum home right here in West Michigan. We released a little teaser trailer, and we're going to be doing a full video release of this project from start to finish, which will be coming out soon. You can check it out over at greenhomeinstitute.org, MI Net Zero tour trailer. And stay tuned for the continuing ed CEU video that we'll have of the project. And this is who GHI members are. This is what GHI members do. So can you go to our website, look at the Become a Member, and sign up. And before we get started, as a reminder, support for the GreenHome Institute comes from Climate. Climate Adhesive is climate resiliency tech in a tube, a moisture-curing, non-shrinking modified polymer adhesive sealant with an exceptional combination of strength and resilience for reinforcement of wood frame buildings. It improves resiliency against earthquakes and wind resistance for homes and buildings. Check out more at climateadhesive.com. All right, this session is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I am the education manager here. This course, as many of our courses are, is approved for multiple continuing education units, including LEED AP Homes and BD+C, as well as AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. So before we jump into it, I kind of want to get a background of the LEED credits we're going to be discussing today at a very high level, and then we'll be going into the details, with our speaker here. And I'm going to be mentioning these from the residential standpoint, but under version 4 and even version 4.1, they work much in the same way under the commercial rating system as well. And so the two main credits that we're going to be referencing here with HempWood today are the materials and resources, environmentally preferable products, and the environmental quality, low-emitting products. And so for materials and resources, environmental permitted products, basically what we're looking at are different building components that meet certain sustainability criteria. And so the ones we're going to be talking about today are flooring base, flooring cover, potentially some extent sheathing, interior finishes, and things like doors, cabinets, and counters. And now when it comes to the bottom ones, doors, cabinets, and counters, you need at least 3 of those items together to achieve that, which is set up a little bit differently than those other ones. And then you can see all of your corresponding points. Now, to achieve it, they have to meet at least 90% of each of these components by weight or volume, need to meet 1 or more of these sustainable criterias. And the ones we're going to be focused on today, to a small extent, and you'll get a sense of how it works, is Forest Stewardship Council, FSC. But the big one we're going to be talking about that I'm really excited about today, finally going to be talking about, is the USDA's Biobased Materials program. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that and how that is interwoven into HempWood and how that works, with credits. Now, the other good news is if you're having more sustainable products, they can also be better for health, as I mentioned, ventilation, air filtration, reducing the need for that. And so, the sustainability attributes of how the products reduce their impact on the environment are one thing, but another way we look at them is through the low emitting section under LEED for indoor environmental quality, and that is with reduced emissions. And so, what we're going to be talking about a little bit today is for flooring, meeting the California Section 01350 or the CARB 2 standard, and to some extent, some of the site applied adhesives that goes into those wood substrates, making sure they also have low emissions within them. And lastly, we'll be talking about the innovation section as well. And I suspect this won't be an innovation section under LEED version 5. It'll probably be built right into the credit. We'll find out for sure. But until then, this is an innovation section on ensuring that the products that are being used have an environmental product declaration to reduce embodied carbon and other impacts on the environment ultimately. And so we'll be talking a little bit within these products about the EPDs. Now, you do need to have at least 20 different products from at least 5 different manufacturers. So we'll only be talking about, a couple different products in one manufacturer within this specific one. So obviously, this is a difficult credit to achieve because it's looking at the whole building and all of the products that are going in. But let's discuss each one by one and their benefits. And notice that there are some products like HempWood, wood that's made out of hemp that's going to achieve all of these multiple LEED goals all in one. The other thing I want to remind you is that whether you're doing LEED or not, or you're just building better, or you're just doing a home renovation project, it doesn't matter. Following these criteria, doing more things more sustainable, that's going to have a better impact for everyone. So continue to listen, even if you're saying, hey, I'm not doing a LEED product, that's okay. We're going to be talking about, a more sustainable way to do things. So with that, I am excited to now formally introduce our speaker here, Greg Wilson. Greg, I'm so glad you could join us here right before the holiday, and welcome, and please take it away.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me today. I want to say welcome everybody to hear a little bit about what we do and why we do it. And at the end of this, we're going to have a Q&A. That way everybody can ask us questions. And then our facility here, we have probably about a quarter of the folks are Spanish. And so since tomorrow is Turkey Day, they're actually going to be cooking a Latin American Thanksgiving feast for the whole meal, which will kick off in about an hour from now. So I'm Greg Wilson. I am the founder of HempWood, and it is my life's mission to make healthy, sustainable building materials. Flooring is where I found my niche. I was one of the guys who developed bamboo flooring back in college 20-some years ago. Lived in China, then did some eucalyptus, did some reclaimed what we called smart oak flooring. And then when hemp became legal about 10 years ago with the 2014 Farm Bill, we started doing research on what we called weedwood. And weedwood now has turned out to hempwood because we actually figured out the differences between the two. So welcome everybody to kind of hear what we do and why we do it, where we are in Murray, Kentucky, and my wife and I own the business, operate the business, and it is our life's work. So we'll hop right here into a presentation, and we'll be able to kind of show everybody what we're doing. Alrighty, so this here coming in from Murray, Kentucky, you can even hear some of the stuff going on in the background in the mill. I'm in the office here. We are showing off healthy building materials that are made with hemp and soy binders to get your LEED certification. Our company's name is Fibonacci because everybody knows the Fibonacci sequence is nature's algorithm. It's the most efficient use of space. It's how every plant grows, every snail shell goes, every petal on a flower. It also happens to be the carbon sequestration ratio of plants, where it takes 1.6 units of carbon to grow 1 unit of cellulose. And so a lot of the different people doing carbon research always kind of circle back to this same ratio of if a plant grows faster, then it is pulling carbon quicker because it is based off of how many units of carbon are used to grow cellulose. Whether it's algae in the sea, which actually grows faster than hemp, or hemp on the land, which is one of the fastest growing crops out there. So it pulls carbon faster than what a plantation timber would grow by a 4-to-1 ratio, or an old growth forest, what we're going to be talking about today, that hemp actually pulls carbon at about 15 times the rate. So because you're getting a CEU for this course, we have to go through some of the objectives here, and then we'll circle back to these at the end. But it kind of demonstrates, hey, this is what we're doing, what we're learning about today. And that way it kind of sticks with you after this, after everybody forgets about me and forgets about HempWood, but says, hey, you know what? The category of healthy building materials is actually what everybody should be after. The sustainability factor of why the health benefits of hemp-based building materials, the safety advantages and your different compliance standards that come along with something that's made in America, where you can literally go on YouTube or check out our Instagram feeds and see who's making what. And so you can tell what's actually going into the building materials that are in your home, just like you should know what's going into the food that you eat or the water that you drink. So we're going to explore how hemp supports the sustainability of Western Kentucky here, as well as the welfare and the reduction in embodied carbon based on the Fibonacci sequence, because everything that we grow comes from within 100 miles of our factory. All of our hemp does. Actually, 80% of it comes from the county that we live in here. I grow it on the organic farm that my wife and I have lived on now for 5 years. We also have the university and our local co-op that are growing it and kind of lead the charge there. And how this reduces the embodied carbon in your material, because our hemp is grown by our friends and neighbors. We're all farmers here. We're all manufacturers here. We're literally just doing this as a team effort. And so if your transportation of your hemp coming from low farms is less than 2 miles from the factory where it's converted into HempWood and then into HempWood flooring, your embodied carbon is significantly reduced, because we can literally pick up the material we want to use today from what used to be tobacco barns 2 miles away where we store it, and then grab what we need for the week or even for the day. We're also going to be discussing the importance of the local sourcing, like we were talking about there, and FSC certification for the environmental benefits, where you know that although we do use some plywood, some wood inside of our HempWood flooring, it actually all comes from West Virginia. That's our neighbor. We're right here in Murray, Kentucky. So our supply chain, nothing in our supply chain goes outside of 1-day transportation, or none of our major components for what we're doing. So first, let's kind of talk about the down and dirty. Let's talk about the problem that we have. Many problems in the world. The problem that we are choosing to address here, and what the life's mission of my wife and I are, is sustainability. So if you can make a living doing lots of different things, why not do something that you care about? Why not do something that makes sense? And growing up as the kid that was always in the creek catching crawfish, or was wanting to lay out in the yard under the stars and just see what's going on and kind of understand the world, it only makes sense that if I'm getting into building and getting into building materials, that I would focus on something that is sustainable, that is natural. And that goes directly along with the second problem that we're addressing, which is health. The third largest cause of cancer is what you're breathing in, behind what you're eating, behind what you are drinking. And some people put those in different orders. But if you are breathing in toxins, which has happened to me when we were using formaldehyde in the bamboo flooring, then you're going to have respiratory conditions that are going to turn into significant health issues. And that can have ramifications for the rest of your life. And so what this demonstrates in the photo that is here right on the left-hand side of your screen, that's actually East Palestine, Ohio. And people don't like to talk about this, but the vinyl chloride that was in the train that derailed in Ohio last year was actually on its way to a vinyl flooring mill, because the chemicals used to make PVC have been documented by the EPA since 1970 as cancer-causing chemicals, but yet they're still inside of 60% of the flooring sold in the United States as LVP, luxury vinyl plank, or luxury vinyl tile, which I find to be absolutely disturbing, with the fact that this type of chemistry was discovered when researching gas warfare in World War I, and now it's almost impossible to find a home or a commercial building in the United States that does not include PVC, polyvinyl chloride. So what's the solution? Going back to what we did before. When you think about homes, when the United States here was founded 300 years ago, and when people were starting to build, they were using all natural materials. And you can still see some of those homes around that were built with stone, that were framed with lumber, that had wood flooring and wood cabinets and wood countertops, rather than all of the synthetic stuff that you're seeing made out of petroleum. And so you're using a plant that pulls carbon faster because it grows faster than your traditional hardwood products. And then you're turning it into a durable good like flooring, furniture, and cabinetry that then locks away that carbon for 100 years. And you're doing this, binding it together with a plant-based glue instead of formaldehyde or isocyanates or all of these different types of chemicals that everybody knows shouldn't be in your home. But it's a lot more profitable to use something and get it made overseas that you wouldn't dream of having yourself in contact with. But Lowe's, Home Depot, and all the big corporations make a living out of it. So here's a little video just to kind of show you what we do and how it's made so you can really see what we're doing.
Dried stalks are separated, crushed, and submerged in a plant-based, no-added formaldehyde resin. A drying kiln circulates air to cure the resin to the stalks. The hemp is then pressed into blocks and baked in the oven. Blocks are then carefully cut to order. The zero waste system uses leftover product to power the on-site bioburner. At the milling factory, HempWood organic flooring comes together. Each piece is then boxed by hand and shipped to customers around the world. See how HempWood can improve your healthy living space. Visit hempwood.com today.
So what you can see here in that video that we just did is that's our team. That's who we are. That's what we do. We grow our hemp in our co-op here. We do it all locally. We make it here with folks that everybody knows everybody's name. We actually have a cookout once or twice a week with stuff that somebody raised, somebody caught, somebody bought. And we have every Friday we're cooking out. We're doing something that kind of gets our team together. And we're not using any dirty chemicals in what we're doing because we want to make sure everybody goes home safe. because of my experience in working in China in the bamboo flooring industry and realizing how there was greenwashing all over it, I actually kind of just decided to check out and go do my own thing. And so using a soy-based adhesive means that the health benefits of what we're doing, you can pronounce all the stuff that's in the product. You can say, hey, you know what? Maybe Joe Kelly from Kelly Farms grew the hemp, and the soy flour is actually upcycled from falling out of the food industry. And so you can get points there for having a upcycled or recycled product. Most of our hemp is actually a dual crop where the primary funds or money that are made off of it are for the top of the plant, the seed. The seed is used for replanting next year, where you can get about $3 a pound. Or if it is for certified organic hemp for human consumption, you get about $1.50 or so per pound of that. Or if you're going to use it for animal feed, you can still make 80 cents to $1 a pound. And if you're getting 800 pounds per acre coming out of it, the primary cash crop revenue driver is going to be the top of the plant. So you're technically using an upcycled hemp stalk and upcycled soy material. And those are the two biggest components of what we do. And that makes it so our customers that are going after the health benefits of the product, as demonstrated in our HPD and your declare label and all of these things, it shows that and has been proven by the National Institute of Health, as well as 20-year studies from Harvard, from Princeton, from many different universities that are showing that improved indoor air quality leads to higher cognitive ability. So not introducing toxins, just like was talked about by Brett at the beginning of this, into your home and then having to filter them out, means that you can actually have higher cognitive ability by not introducing these VOCs into your classroom like you see here or into your home. And that means you're going to have higher test results. That means you're going to have higher productivity. That means you're not going to have allergens, or you're not going to have any sort of reactions to these chemicals that people can't even explain what they are or how to pronounce them. Because you can say, oh, that makes sense. You've got a couple of ingredients here, and they're all grown on a farm. So we are finding that we're actually backed up in orders for schools and universities and tech companies that are after indoor air quality, because they're finding 6.4% higher test scores. They're finding up to 14% higher productivity from the people inside of these rooms that aren't using any VOCs. So the photo here is Greenwood High School in Warren County, Kentucky. And believe it or not, us rednecks in Kentucky had the first net zero public school in 2010, and that was in Warren County. And now we are supplying every single school remodel or new build in Warren County for the next 5 years. And they're doing solar that is over top of their parking lots. They're doing low carbon concrete. They're doing no VOC products like HempWood in all the classrooms, like all of the paints. And the CFO of the school district just got kind of fed up saying, you know what? When he went to school back in the 70s and the 80s, every single public school in the United States that he was aware of used asbestos tiles for the flooring. And then you wonder what's going on with everything with the kids, with all of the just things that are happening with ADD and ADHD and allergens and all of the different problems that weren't really around. And so they just said, hey, you know what? This is what we want to do. And since they've initiated this program, they've become the #1 school district in the state by test scores, by college acceptance rates, by productivity of their students, and the property values in Bowling Green, Kentucky have been going wild. You actually have upwards of 12 to 15% annual growth in the area because everybody wants to have their kids going to the best school. And we're finding this roll-on effect with projects that we're doing, starting with the Ivy Leagues, that we're doing a project at Cornell, we're doing a project at Princeton, we're doing a project at UPenn. We also have projects going on at University of Kentucky, Murray State. I even believe that Ball State and Purdue are doing some projects with it. We just did University of Delaware a couple weeks ago, Washington State, Oregon State, Berkeley. So the schools are catching on and saying, hey, you know what? Not having dirty chemicals inside of the classroom is better for everybody. That gets us next into the sustainability side of it. And the sustainability side of it, if something grows fast and pulls carbon quickly, then it's obviously going to be a lower carbon or negative carbon footprint than something that is made out of petroleum. And so your synthetics like vinyl flooring, or all of your different glues like formaldehyde, or all of your different paints that are oil-based, all of those things everybody knows aren't good for you. Everybody knows that if it's made of petroleum, it's got a high carbon footprint. And if it's made of natural materials, it's got a lower carbon footprint. Well, if it grows faster, it pulls carbon quicker. And so we have our LCA and we have our APD, and they show that HempWood sequesters carbon after taking into account all of the carbon used to harvest to manufacture the product. For our cradle to gate LCA and APD, showing that we have 1 pound per square foot of carbon stored for 100 years. And that 100 years comes from HempWood flooring being 20% harder than hickory. You will resand your floor every 25 years. And if you have a 4 millimeter top above the tongue, then it would be 3 sands that you can get out of it, giving you a 100-year residential use. The HempWood lumber in the board foot, which is a little bit thicker, which actually has more carbon stored in it, gets about 1.6 pounds. And we get to this number because we actually built the factory. I'm not originally from Kentucky, but Kentucky is the best place to grow hemp in the United States. Murray State here was on the forefront of planting hemp because they weren't a land grant university. So they didn't have to worry about losing federal funding by growing a Schedule I narcotic on their hemp fields or in their farmers' fields. They just said, hey, let's give it a try, because as tobacco's phasing out, people aren't making money on the farm around here. And so we found Dr. Brandon. He actually answered the phone when I called from China saying, hey, I'm looking at doing this. And he said, what do you need? I said, well, I need access to scientists when I can't afford to pay 6-figure salaries to all these different scientists that you only need 5 or 10 hours a week out of. And he said, all right, we got the school here. I said, I need renewable energy. And he said, let me tell you about the TVA system and how we're only 19 miles from Kentucky Dam, which supplies our hydroelectric. And then he said, and we can also get you into these REAP programs, renewable energy from agricultural practices for the USDA, which reimburses 50% of all of our renewable energy investments here at the mill. So we actually have bio-waste thermal, thanks to these renewable grants, where we burn our waste hemp, we grind it up, we burn it. Since we're using a soy glue, you can still burn it. And it has a method of spitting out biochar and a scrubber, so you're only emitting 2% of the carbon that's created by burning it. It heats a fluid that goes to the radiators in the ovens, which is the highest thermal requirement, the dryers, the kilns, and the building. So we're working off of right now 99.5% renewable energy in our mill. The reason we still have a 0.5% that's there is we actually have a propane grill that we're cooking out every Friday and sometimes during the week too. We're on a farm, literally. I'm looking out the window here. We grow hemp right next to us, and sometimes somebody gets a deer in the morning and we eat it for lunch. We also do have propane forklifts. Whenever I get enough money together, I want to switch those over to electric. It makes sense, but you end up spending $30,000 per electric forklift. So we have our LCA, we have our APD, We are truly carbon negative because we're turning our waste into our thermal energy. That makes us a zero waste process. And then that biochar that's spit out of our bioburner is actually a potash replacement for a fertilizer for planting hemp the next year. So we have zero waste. It's pretty wild. We actually call it the chocolate factory. I did well enough with the bamboo that I was able to build this one the way you're supposed to build it, rather than the way that an investor would tell you to build it, because it's never cheaper to do the right thing in the short term. So your standards and compliance, you can see the density here is very similar to a 200-year-old Brazilian cherry. That's because the original hemp that we take, we soak it in the soy glue. We dry out the water using our thermal energy as the agent for drying it. We then compress it times the Fibonacci sequence, which I told you about. And you can see, if you can see my hat right here, you see the little phi that goes through the HempWood logo that pulls back to what our company's name actually is, and the compression ratio for making all of this. And that gives you the optimum density, which equals your hardness, your stability, and your fire resistance. Since we'll get into it here, but you'll see it's a very fire resistant product for being a natural material. And that's because the density is so high. Your hardness, 2200, that's 20% harder than hickory. Means it's a pain in the ass to work with. But at the same time, it means that it's perfect for durable flat goods, flooring, furniture, cabinetry, architectural millwork. The dimensional stability is based on the movement of the product when you have different humidity tests that go along with it. HempWood does not have issues with humidity because we're laying it up in a cross-directional standard, just like you're doing with the plywood. We make an engineered floor so it can go on a concrete subfloor. It's too hard to be nailed down, but because you're nailing it through the Pure Bond plywood, which are the folks that taught us how to use the soy glue, then it makes it fit for purpose. So you're not getting claims all over the place like I've experienced with a lot of the other natural products like wood flooring, like bamboo flooring, like smart oak, like eucalyptus. Our fire rating for the flooring with the 648 is class 1. That means it can go anywhere, even in the fire escape of your commercial building. The fire rating for the E84, that is for walls, that is for structural materials, that is a class B, and that is because they actually take that test and they stick it in a warming oven so it warms up, and then they hit it with a blowtorch instead of a lighter on all sides, and it actually burns the poplar backer. So the abrasion resistance is based on our Bona coatings. That means it's scratch resistant, it's abrasion resistant, and if you do have any sort of an issue with the floor scratching, you actually go back and put on Bona refresher products or another top coat on it, and it takes the scratches straight out. So the slip resistance is based on the fact that we only make matte flooring, matte being the gloss level, and that's because it looks a lot more natural. As soon as you go high gloss on flooring, it looks plasticky. So nobody wants to buy a healthy natural floor that then looks like plastic. Then you got your formaldehyde emissions, which is super important to me because I've got health issues now since 2009 from dealing with formaldehyde. And so we are CARB 2 and TSCA 6 compliant. Our VOC emissions are below detectable levels, which means essentially no VOCs. It means you cannot detect any formaldehyde, any off-gassing, any VOCs coming out of our product because we're just using natural stuff. The USDA Bio-Preferred, which Brett was getting into, is something that's super important to us. A lot of our work, our research has actually been sponsored by the USDA. Funny story, in 2018, they sued me for applying for a renewable energy grant. And then when they showed up, they said that we were burning a controlled one substance in our bio burner that was actually partially funded. At that time, it was 25%. With the Inflation Reduction Act, that has moved up to 50% reimbursement for putting in these REAP grant projects or renewable energies. So when they were doing their walkthrough, they had approved everything. I just said I was going to burn sawdust and scrap. from our flooring mill. And they said, okay. And then they came out and looked and said, you're burning hemp. When that got up to Washington, they took me to court. And then when it turns out that HempWood is exempt from the Controlled Substance Acts of 1970, as well as the 14 and 18 Farm Bill, it got deemed to be the same as hemp rope or a canvas sack, which are both made out of hemp. Then the USDA came down, officially apologized, and said, hey, we got a program that would be perfect for you. And so we got the USDA Biopreferred certification, the first wood flooring in the United States that got this USDA Biopreferred certification. It's also the first wood flooring in the United States that did an EPD. I'm not sure about the LCA, so I can't say if anybody else had done one of those before. But this basically shows that what percentage of the product is plant-based in your process. And so you have to declare everything that's in there, as well as you have to declare where it came from, what's in it, and send it off to a university that they approve that then dissects it and determines if that's true. So you'll see our flooring is 95% plant-based, and the only thing that is not plant-based inside of there is the coatings on top, which are water-based, but they have some petroleum in them, and then the glue that holds the hempwood to the plywood. Yeah. Oh, here we go. So the FSC certification on our plywood that comes from Columbia Forestry Products is super important to us. They're the ones that showed us what to do and how to do it. They said that Bing already took them there. So the FSC certified plywood with the soy-based glue comes out of West Virginia, which is our neighboring state. And it just means that you're kind of taking care of the forest. It means that if you're cutting something down, then you're going to replace it with something that'll grow back. Columbia Forestry Products is a employee-owned business. They are fantastic to work with because they know what it's like to try to do the right thing. I guess as a side note here, you cannot get FSC certification on hemp because it is not a forest product. We've already gone down that avenue. That means our chain of custody for making the total product is not allowed to have FSC logo or certification on it. So we are using FSC certified wood as a component in making our flooring, but we are not able to have that final logo on our product because we're using agricultural products. So we did the USDA Biopreferred certification. Here's some of the uses of the product. We do a whole lot of commercial. We do more residential orders than we do commercial orders, but the volume of the commercial orders is significantly larger because we're doing whole schools, whole universities, entire government buildings that end up being, say, 2, 3, 5 truckloads of hempwood flooring. Whereas when we do our residential projects, it's typically about 600 square feet, something like that is about our average. So you can see there's cabinet doors that are made out of it. That's in Asheville, North Carolina. She was safe after the last hurricane that came through there. There's tabletops that you can see. That's a high gloss one. That means somebody did an epoxy pour on it. That one looked really, really good. But I'm more of a fan of your more natural coatings. You can see a commercial floor that's in an architect firm in Lexington, Kentucky. They are great to us, big supporters. And then that's Greenwood High School in the bottom right. And that has our flooring in, it's just over 100 classrooms that are inside of that school. I believe it was originally 64,000 square feet and they ended up adding 11,000 more. So we ended up doing 75,400 square feet that's going into that total building. That's been our biggest project to date, but we've got a couple of net zero projects in New York City that are coming up that are bigger. I got another little video here that will reiterate on some of the points that we're trying to go over here. I know that listening to somebody for 45 minutes or an hour or whatever can be a lot. And so I like to have these little 1-minute videos that we do that you can find on YouTube on the HempWood channel that will just kind of show you the key points in case you've got somebody who wants to put HempWood into their project or into their home. So this is just an explainer video. It's 1 minute long. It's a cartoon.
Since 1960, more than half of the world's tropical forests have been destroyed, and nearly 5 billion tons of carbon dioxide are dumped into the atmosphere every year due to deforestation. If we continue these practices, only 10% of the world's forests could remain in 2030. So what's the solution? HempWood. HempWood is made from fiber hemp stalks grown organically by local farmers in 4 months and is bound by a non-toxic plant-based adhesive. HempWood can be used for hardwood lumber and flooring. The manufacturing process even utilizes bio-based energy, making it a carbon-negative product. And since it's made in America, customers can expect shorter lead times and a higher quality product. HempWood is a sustainable solution to deforestation. Visit hempwood.com today to learn more.
So as we're getting towards the end of this thing, the key takeaway here is that indoor air quality affects cognitive ability, which in turn affects your health and your decision making. So why not go for healthy natural materials instead of synthetics? The safety standards and the compliance of what we're doing to make sure if you're using a natural material, it's got the fire ratings, it's got the VOC emissions that make it legal to use for its intended purpose, which means that sometimes you shouldn't be using natural materials if they can't perform. And so we've had to meet those key criteria. And then the sustainability factor is nobody wants to have a home that has vinyl floor. Whenever you see an advertisement for a home for sale, it always says wood floors, granite countertops, right? And so the sustainability element of using something that is healthy and natural and doesn't include formaldehydes and all these different chemicals and all these different things that you can't quite understand, or illegally harvested logs, or things that are just not right. It means that you're actually contributing to making a difference. That's what's out there. And you're becoming kind of a global citizen. So in closing, I just want to thank everybody for attending. We're not hippies. We don't smoke weed all the time, all of that stuff. We're actually people that are looking for a healthy natural material that we can make right here in the United States, so you don't have to worry about is or is not the government going to put tariffs on what's coming in, or if supply chains get messed up. If I really need to, I'll send my own driver to pick up the farthest part of our supply chain, which is the West Virginia plywood. So to date, we've got about 4,200. It's probably closer to 4,300 metric tons, which is a real ton rather than a US short ton, of carbon that have been sequestered. That means we've had 4,200 carbon credits that we have sold. We have about 2,000 installations. That number's probably gone up a little bit since then. It's probably more like 2,200. For our carbon credits, we get $21. Typically, it's for a marketing employee. We actually sell them to people that are doing petroleum-based flooring, typically vinyl flooring. They'll buy our carbon credits, and it makes them feel good, and it helps us kind of keep the lights on. And we've done about 1.2 million square feet. Once again, that one's probably gone up. It's probably closer to 1.4 million square feet at the time of this discussion. And you can see here that everything we do is according to the Fibonacci sequence, which is nature's algorithm. Even the phone number to the office, the address to the building, The size of our products are 5 inches wide and 5/8 inch thick because 5s and 8s are all Fibonacci numbers. And that allows you, from medieval times when people were building monasteries, starting to learn the building trades, and everybody thought it was witchcraft or secrecy that the Masons were able to build all of these different churches that turned out to be beautiful. Well, no, it actually turned out they figured out nature's algorithm, the Fibonacci sequence, and it allows you to have less wastage when you're laying out a floor if the entire building is built according to the golden ratio. So I guess that's all I got to do is kind of say, hey, thanks for attending here, and thank you for listening to my life's work.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Greg. And before we jump into those questions, just a real quick recap and summary for everybody here. As far as the LEED BD+C version 4 credits go, both for residential homes, commercial, mid-rise, multifamily, you name it, we kind of discussed the environmentally preferable products and how it's meeting those, as well as the low-emitting products, really the main categories of how materials score in LEED points and how HempWood is a component of that. And so there are many different facets of HempWood and how they're being materials that they can be made into that are worth points within the LEED system. And to get those, of course, we discussed the FSC to some extent on the backings that go into the flooring, as well as, more importantly, the bio-based material and meeting that bio-based standard for these products, as long as it's 90% of all the products that are going into the house or multifamily building or commercial building, these points can be achieved under the environmentally preferable products, materials, and resource section. And as Greg mentioned, having a healthy building standard leads to many different benefits when we reduce the emissions of the materials in the first place. And so again, looking at that through the CARB 2 or California section 01350 and having HempWood meet that, as well as any of the adhesives and sealants that are being applied to installing these different products meeting that CARB section, are also worth a small amount, but points. One thing to remember, though, is that this is a subset of all products that are being installed in the building. So you want to make sure that you're chasing after all of your product manufacturers, all of your vendors, to make sure, especially for the site applied adhesives and sealants, very hard to achieve that. You got to first of all get it all verified at the beginning. So making sure you're speccing only products that are meeting that. Beyond just HempWood, it has to be 90% of all the materials. And then second, it has to be verified in the field by the Green Rater. So what will happen is you'll spec it, but then the installer, the general contractor, will show up with something completely different. Probably won't happen with the HempWood, but something else, right? Some other adhesive or sealant that's being applied, they'll show up with the wrong thing, and it will derail your host certification. I will tell you from experience, we had that happen on a recent project where they were actually using air quality monitors at the end, and the VOCs were off the charts, and found out that somebody used the wrong sealant that wasn't specified. And so now, unfortunately, they're having to put in remediation efforts. So you really have to do a lot of project management to meet this. But by speccing products like HempWood that are made out of HempWood, you're going to, eliminate that problem from the beginning. And then, as Greg mentioned, having those EPDs, really fantastic to hear about. The renewable energy component, the carbon negativity component, but having that EPD as another component of all of the materials you're selecting, along with HempWood, that's going to, of course, lead to additional 1 point in the innovation, and of course, have a more environmentally sustainable product. So make sure you're asking all of your manufacturers for those EPDs. They'll provide them. And know that a lot of the green building programs now, such as our Green Star program, and others, are actually looking at reducing embodied carbon and having to do those calculations through our friends at Beam, through our friends at LC3 for the commercial sector. ResNet just put out a public notice to incorporate embodied carbon within the energy ratings. So the energy rater who's coming out to do your LEED energy rating is now also going to be looking at potentially embodied carbon in the future, all within that same review that's being done. So the tools are aligning now, energy rating, water ratings, embodied carbon ratings, all within one. And so we're starting to see that come together. So making sure it makes it easy. When you have folks like HempWood, they just have the EPD, they just make it easy, you get it done. So make sure you're chasing after your other vendors, for that as well. So let's get into those questions. And before we do, just a quick reminder that yes, this session is being recorded. Yes, you can watch it when it comes out. You can share it online. You can catch what you missed. You can give it to a friend or a colleague. It'll all be there on our YouTube. You can go there right now. You can click subscribe. You'll get an instant update when it's available. Otherwise, you can check back in the next couple days. Give us a little break on this one. We've got a holiday coming up, but hopefully within the next week, we'll have it posted. For those of you watching live or watching this in the future on demand, take your quiz with an 80% passing rate. You'll receive your continuing ed. For those of you here today, hopefully you've been here for the entire CEU hour. You're logged in with the appropriate name you want printed on your certificate. Check your spam over the next couple days. certs@gutenbergcerts.com. You'll receive your certificate, your CEUs, and go from there. And as always, we just want to say a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, our nearly 400 members. We're so close. I hope if you're not a member yet, you can help us hit our goal of 400 by the end of the year. We're very close. And all of our sponsors who have more sustainable products to help you meet and beat the LEED standards, such as Rheem, Build Equinox, Climate, Mitsubishi, Panasonic, large corporations, small companies, everybody supports our work to continue to do these efforts. So yeah, Greg, there's some questions coming in. One of them, and I was thinking this too, is just like the life cycle of these materials. And before we even get to that part, I'm thinking about, like with LEED, there's also some additional points for waste diversion. And unfortunately, a lot of what we find are those points are kind of heavily reliant upon, the local waste diversion facilities, right? It's really just depending on the infrastructure that's in place. But, take me through this. Someone's using your product, they've got a little bit of leftover. The question is kind of like, what can be done with that to divert it from the landfill now? And then eventually during, deconstruction of the building, what can be done with your product that is it pre-designed to be, in a sense, avoiding the landfill? Like, can you just talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the life cycle analysis that we did, the best use, and I had to argue with those folks because we actually did the first wood flooring LCA or EPD in the United States. And so the intended use at end of life is reclaimed flooring. So if you always hear about, oh, hey, I got these floors that came out of a building that was built in 1900 in Chicago out of a wood that almost doesn't exist anymore.
No.
We would prefer to have this used as the same as reclaimed flooring. You would probably have to recoat it, would be my guess, but you could pull it out, you could reuse it. We do have customers that do that regularly. If you're gluing it down, that might not be the option. So that's for a nail down, that's for a floater. The second use that you could do for this at the end of it is what we do here in our mill is we turn it into energy, where we actually take our scraps that we can't cut up a board and use it for samples. Those pieces go into the chipper, and that goes into our bio burner, which is commonly done now in a lot of different locations where people are taking parts of the waste stream from a town, a city, going into the incinerator and making electricity for the city. So that's becoming more and more common. And then the third one is it is biodegradable by just burying it in the ground. And that is about a 7-year process in the pre-finished product that does have all of the sealers and coatings on it, making it more water resistant. If you're doing just the HempWood lumber product, then you're looking at more like 2 years. And so biodegradability is there, or the last option would be putting it into the landfill.
Yeah. So biodegradability is there, but it wouldn't be a product that would be going into one of those certified compostable facilities. Is that correct?
The lumber is compostable without coating on it.
Yeah.
We're actually doing a project with Apple, and that's one of their requirements, but they're not doing the flooring, and they're having us use linseed oil as
Okay.
coating. And so for the HempWood core product, yes. Once you have to make it fit for purpose for flooring, meaning you got to get the water resistance up, that means that it is not as biodegradable because we're gearing towards water resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. The other question that came in here is its applicability with radiant flooring. Is there anything that anyone should be aware of if they're trying to do a radiant flooring system with this material?
So hydronic works great. You have the water as the medium that makes it so it does not jump in temperature too quickly. I can say that my experience with, and I'm applying it to this just based out of theory, but wood floor with electric underfloor heating, you should not increase the temperature more than 15 degrees in a 1 hour period because you'll send a shock into a natural product. So that's what we're recommending for this. We haven't had it fail anywhere with those type of systems, but you'll want to go by the fact that trying to heat up wood too quick will cause it to dry out and shrink a little bit. So you have to do it less than 15 degrees per hour with electric. Hydronic already takes care of that because you can't heat it up too quickly.
True. Yeah. And hopefully people are running their system and they're not making a 15-degree swing anyway. So now what about passive solar while we're on that discussion? You know, I know a lot of people typically use concrete to retain heat as a thermal mass. Are there any benefits, or is it going to, you know, work like any other traditional wood flooring for, you know, passive solar retainment?
So I actually live in a passive house on an organic farm, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
put HempWood in my home 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We have an R value of between 2 and 2.5. So it does warm above and beyond what concrete would be, but
Yeah.
it's not going to retain heat any
Right.
quicker than
Right.
a engineered wood floor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. What's the other question that came in here?
They were talking about soy.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Question, yeah. Our official stance, as guided by the United Soybean Board, who does help us with our soy research,
Yeah.
is, Greg, you're not a doctor, so do not prescribe whether this will or will not cause an allergy that could be potentially hazardous to somebody. You can say that the soy flour that is in the product, which is actually about 11% of hempwood, and when you add it onto the plywood backer, it ends up being about 14% of the total product. It is encapsulated and you're not putting it into your body. So people that have lower sensitivity to it should try to see if they are allergic to it with samples before you go ahead and put 2,500 feet in your house. People with high sensitivity to soy, unfortunately, you should probably just look somewhere else because I don't want to be responsible for some sort of an issue. Even though the likelihood that it's there is minimal, I just don't want, I don't want to cause harm.
Yeah.
I'd rather
Well,
sell.
Well, staying on that allergy note, you know, people can have hemp allergies. And do you recommend people get a hemp allergy test, you know, before installing this, before living in it? I mean, what are your thoughts?
You want to put on your tinfoil hat?
Well, I just want to be honest, you know, people are allergic to all sorts of things. So,
So most of your agricultural allergies, in my opinion, and what I've seen research on, is you're allergic to glyphosate. You're allergic to the pesticides, herbicides, the shit that's being sprayed on all of those industrial crops. And
yeah.
because hemp does not have any approved herbicides, pesticides, or sprays allowed on it,
Yeah.
the likelihood that you're going to be allergic to something that doesn't have a poisonous chemical that's actually the allergen there
Yeah.
is minimal.
Yeah.
So a hemp allergy, I haven't heard that before, but
Okay.
soy I hear regularly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw anything under the bus. And the soybean board has been great to us because industrial use of soy is a big deal. And it's
Yeah.
significantly better than formaldehyde. But
Yeah.
I think that most of those people are allergic to the spray, not the actual soy.
And
Not
and
all,
and
but
wouldn't it be more on the flowering side, if anything, right? People get allergic to trees, all sorts of things, but that's usually on the pollen side. Once the tree is processed, it's not, right? I mean, is that same logic there?
I would think so. Yeah. One
Yeah.
of our customers actually here in Kentucky builds furniture, a
Yeah.
great woodworker, and is allergic to the tenons and white oak.
Yeah.
So there's always an exception out there, but
Right. Yeah. It's a rare. Yeah.
it, hey, test it yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm an engineer. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. And there was a question here about white oak. So you just mentioned one thing of it, but someone was looking for a comparison between hempwood and locally grown Missouri white oak, if there's any difference. But I mean, I guess you could go on comparisons all day, but just a general comparison of your standard wood flooring versus hemp.
Yeah. So hempwood is 40% harder than white oak, 20% harder than hickory. So from a durability perspective, it will be greater for high traffic areas. Hemp grows in 4 months. Your typical white oak tree is 60 years before it's harvested for flooring. And so it will be more sustainable than white oak. Now, the components that are going to go into a white oak floor, typically most flooring manufacturers use Baltic birch, which
Yeah.
means Russian birch with phenol formaldehyde glue in it. And so looking at the components that are inside of there and what type of water-based coating versus polyurethane, which is oil-based coatings, trying to figure out what's there is going to be your healthy element of it. But oak is a healthy product by itself. It's just to get the cost down and the water resistance up without having to do a lot of edge treatments and extra stuff. People use phenol formaldehyde because
Yeah.
Baltic birch is cheap and works, but it's not good for you.
Yeah.
So price wise, exact same price.
Yeah.
If I buy top layers for making a engineered white oak floor from Middle Tennessee lumber, which might not be Missouri, but Missouri is only 50 minutes from us, then I can say that our flooring that we make out of hempwood is the exact same price that we would sell flooring made out of our local oak. And that is between, we have stuff at $5.99 a foot. We have stuff that goes to $9.99. So $6 to $10 a square foot is our primary products, depending on grade and coatings and colors. Anything over $10 means that it's custom. So if you want us to match a color for you, we'll do it. If
Yeah.
you want us to make a wider plank, a longer plank, if you want us to do a special design like the herringbone you see behind me, we do all that stuff. It just comes with a cost.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was another one of the questions about just some unique approaches here, opaque coatings, natural dyes, different looks. Those are all things you can kind of do, just customize those things.
Absolutely. We do all different types of, I've had people that wanted a turquoise blue
Sure.
hint inside of their herringbone wall. They
Right.
actually flew me to California to put it in their wine cellar
Yeah.
because they wanted to be able to tell their friends, hey, the guy who invented this hempwood installed this floor, and we had to sit there and we put a water-based turquoise coating on it, and then we sanded it off, and then we put on the regular coatings on top of it. So there's all different types of chevrons and herringbones and different patterns that I've seen and that we've done and that we make, all different types of colors. So it's completely customizable. That's part of the beauty of being right here in Kentucky is you literally just call me and say, hey, Greg, actually, I need all of the planks to be 5 feet long, not an average of 5 to 6 feet. Yeah, that's
Right.
fine. That works.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was some discussion about, FSC and bio-based and I'm mentioning that, hey, you can't get the FSC, it doesn't apply to this product. So the bio-based in the sense of, hey, here's this other certification. So there was some clarification someone wanted to seek if whether USDA Biobased was a stand-in for FSC, and I want to be clear to everyone that it certainly is not. They both have two different intentions. The FSC is meant to prevent deforestations in countries that have more lax controls on forest management, whereas the bio-based is meant to try to shift our economy from a petrochemical to a more of a naturally grown material. So those are very two different things. It's not meant to be a trade-off. Do you have anything to add to that, Greg?
So the bio-preferred program, which we're very familiar with, is an initiative that's been started for quite a while, but there's a lot more emphasis on it.
Yeah.
And the federal government has now, they did an executive order 3 or 4 years ago, it might go away with the new administration, I don't know. But it said, hey, government buildings are going to start educating for 2 years and then requiring to document how many USDA bio-preferred products are used in federal buildings.
Right.
Then they're going to have a certain percentage. It was like 20 or 25% of the building had to be made of bio-preferred products for federal buildings.
New buildings, right?
What'd you say?
New construction, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the government's trying to steer it in that direction, and I'm all for it because it at least tells you how much of a material is actually plant-based.
Right.
Other than all of the tricks that I see, because I mean, I lived in China for 14 years building mills, and I'll tell you, I used to have to live upstream, or I used to have to go fishing for largemouth bass, believe it or not, in Enji, China, upstream from where the bamboo was being prepared to be turned into logs, because they were doing a boiling process with hydrogen peroxide and then dumping it into the river. And then using phenol formaldehyde as the glue and saying, oh, hey, look at this sustainable product. But it wasn't quite there. It's just kind of greenwashing. And so the government saying, hey, you know what? Tell me how much of this is plant-based. Because if you tell them, and then you have to send it to, we sent ours to Georgia Tech, where they had to certify it. It keeps everybody honest.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. So we've got hemp insulation, we've got hempcrete homes. Now we're talking about flooring, some different interior wall coverings, cabinetry, all the other products you've mentioned. So the question here is, when are we going to get our hemp studs and exterior interior framing? When do you see that coming?
Yeah, we already invented it.
Yeah.
We got patents and trademarks on it. So we got patents and trademarks on the cold press process here, which is direct competitor for hardwood, oak, hickory, walnut. The softwood components, we have something we call OHB, oriented hemp board, to replace OSB. It's expensive. We're using a plant-based glue. It cost me $84 per sheet to make it, which means I got to sell it for at least $100 or I'll go out of business. And if you're buying a Huber system tongue and groove subfloor at 3/4 of an inch, and you're paying $65, why would you pay $100 for something? So I'm going to have to sell it direct. And what we really need is the new farm bill to pass that allows the seed for human consumption as well as animal consumption to make it so we can buy dual crop hemp that cost $150 a ton on the open market, which is half of what we do now, because it costs us $250 a ton to grow our own dedicated crop hemp. So raw material costs have to come down, and then the OHB panel will roll out within 12 to 18 months. I mean, we're already making it. So we're already sending it out to do building, to get building code in the different weather jurisdictions in the US, with Carnegie Mellon, with Vanderbilt here, with Oregon State on the West Coast. And actually, we've signed some agreements with the Lower Sioux Nation that are putting hempwood flooring and hemp insulation on their reservation for 160 houses. They don't have to follow building code, and they don't have to really listen to all of the stuff. So they said, hey, we're your first customers, start selling it to us.
Yeah.
They're actually growing the hemp, sending it to us. We're converting it into their flooring, their furniture, their cabinetry. And they
Yeah.
just gave us the go ahead for the structural panels that they're going to just start building it. They're like, hey, we'll build these that somebody's not going to live in. We're going to build them as our trials to say, you know what? Finally, they're doing something before we are. They're the
Yeah.
ones that are saying, fuck it, let's go.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the Farm Bill, and we always love to promote advocacy when there's a reason to advocate for more sustainable practices. And remind me, is the Farm Bill, is that something that needs reauthorization, and then you're advocating for all these things in it? Is that coming up again soon? Where are we at? Are the hemp associations working on this?
They are. The Farm Bill was due last year.
Okay.
Kick the can down the road because
Yeah, yeah.
nobody wants to. They're now calling it like the Healthy and Sustainable Flooring Acts. They keep submitting different jurisdictions. The hemp part of it is very controversial.
Okay.
A lot of it is one of the biggest departments. So this regulates the budget for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Right.
5 years. And so it's kind of messy and ugly because the last time when they made hemp as a commercial product that didn't have to be in conjunction with a research university,
Yeah.
they left loopholes out that had all the intoxicating hemp that came out.
Okay.
And so now they're trying to figure out on the hemp part of it. That's 85% of the hemp industry in the United States is the CBDs, the THCs, all the things that don't quite make sense to me.
Right.
Just like when you can't explain the chemicals that's going on. If I can't explain the chemical that's coming out of a plant that you genetically modify to do it, what is that?
Right.
So for us, industrial hemp, good. That includes grain and fiber hemp.
Yeah.
As all of the other stuff, I'm not saying bad. I'm just saying not my business.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we'll keep an eye out for that and see where we can send some stuff out. So, well, Greg, we are at our time. I appreciate you sticking around a little bit here with the holiday coming up, but let's go ahead and wrap up. Where can people just again remind them where they can go to reach out to you or learn more?
HempWood.com. So we are the only hempwood in the world. So all roads lead to Murray, Kentucky. HempWood.com. We also, on all the social medias, we are HempWood. So if you're going to Instagram, you can see cool stuff and keep up with us if you follow us there.
Yeah.
Facebook is actually probably a lot better for business because you can put more words, not just pictures. TikTok, I've never actually used it, but we've got an intern that does. We've got YouTube where you can find all the videos that you saw today. Look at our YouTube channel. And just in general, what I urge people to do is if you have to make a choice, not only in building materials, but what you're doing, take the high road. If you're going to go grab something to eat and you say, hey, you know what? I don't got a lot of time, so I'm going to get a burger. Go to your local burger shop where you know that beef is actually beef rather than getting a Big Mac. If you're going to be building in your home, don't grab what's cheap and easy at Home Depot because that typically means it's shitty from overseas. But just like whenever you see vinyl flooring that's $1 a square foot, that means it's made by a kid in Cambodia using dirty chemicals.
Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all. We'll be back next week but otherwise, for all who celebrate, have a happy Thanksgiving. So take care.
Yeah.
Be well.
Just give us a holler. Thanks, folks.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.